What is going on, YouTube? This is Jim back with another video, here to give you guys my final thoughts on The Last of Us 2. Now, before I begin, there are two quick things I want to point out. Number one, major shout out to Brent for putting together an extremely comprehensive review of the game. I know he liked it. Clearly, he talked a lot about it. You should definitely check that out. So thanks, Brent. I really appreciate you putting some content on my channel because it took me a little longer to beat it. Number two, this video is going to be filled with spoilers. So if you haven't played The Last of Us 2 and you didn't read the title that says Last of Us 2 spoilers, I'm telling you now, go away. For everybody else, let's talk a little bit about the game. Now, I'm not going to cover too much anything revelatory in terms of the plot. What I wanted to focus on was two things. Number one, personally, I liked Abby a lot more than Ellie. That may come as a shock to some people because Ellie's kind of the tentpole character. The collector edition was about her. As a matter of fact, both collector editions were about her, prominently featuring her gear, her statue, stuff like that. Abby was not even mentioned at all, and if you had not been paying attention, like me, to any of the spoilers, you would have no idea who the hell she even was. The only clue that I got that Abby existed was on the Steelbook. Actually, on one cover is Ellie, and on the other cover is Abby. I didn't know it was Abby at the time. I just saw a woman that wasn't Ellie, and I'm like, who is this? Come to find out, it was Abby. I loved Abby's story. I think Abby's story was far better than Ellie's story for a lot of reasons. And I think the biggest thing I can focus on, forgetting all of the idea of revenge and how far it's going to take you, whatever, The Last of Us did a really, really good job of tying gameplay to actual story. Far too many games disconnect these two concepts, and it's crazy to think that so many games still haven't gotten this right. I'll give you guys a perfect example, one that is probably a polarizing opinion as well. I thought Red Dead Redemption 2 was garbage. And the biggest reason I did is because the way I played Arthur Morgan was a villain. He was bad. He went around and murdered people. He stole. Yes, he helped out his gang, but he did it in very, very evil ways. And yet, the name of the game, The Redemption of Arthur Morgan, which I will still argue was not even there, definitely was a major disconnect from what I did. Unlike this game, in Last of Us 2, I was a jerk. I had to be a jerk. And whether I was playing with Ellie or with Abby, I was a one-man or woman wrecking crew. I killed everybody. I played stealth a lot, but I killed everybody. I purposely went back, I killed them, I took all their treasures, I looted every single corner of every single room, I crafted every possible thing that I could, and I did it, and I enjoyed it. Obviously, because the gameplay was good. I'm not a murderer in real life. However, when the cutscenes happened, we saw the mental impacts of these actions on both Ellie and Abby. So much so that Ellie gave up everything at the end. A normal life. A life that Joel tried to provide for her, despite the fact that he kind of doomed humanity to do so. He always looked out for Ellie. He was clearly very, like a paternal figure to her. He was very involved in her life. He loved her like a daughter. He took great care of her. He wanted her to have this. And at the end, she shunned all of that. She gave up her life with Dina. She gave up her life with JJ in this quest for this odd revenge. And she was really remorseless when it came to that last area, fighting yet that third faction, killing everybody in there just to get her hands on Abby one more time. Now, you could argue at the very, very, very end, she let Abby go. This is after, of course, she sliced Abby probably 15 times with a switchblade, jabbed her pretty extensively in the chest, and most likely left Abby for dead, or at least critically wounded. Yes, Abby does row off, but to where nobody knows. She was definitely feeling it though. Ellie, on the other hand, gets 2 of her fingers chewed off. She loses the love of her life. She loses her adopted stepson. And she is also kind of lost as well. That made so much sense based on how we played this game. And I love that. I love that you can't just go around and murder people, but yet the game dictates, oh, you have to be a good guy. Now you get a happy ending. There are no happy endings in Last of Us 2, and I really appreciated that. That to me separates this game from just about every other game. There is one exception. Of course, you know the game I'm going to mention, Shadow of the Colossus. In that game, you do things that are bad. You are a bad person, and you see the impacts of your decisions told throughout the story. Far too many open world games, far too many narrative-based games like to disconnect the two things. Sam Fisher, cold-blooded murderer 1 second, a diehard patriot the second. Can the two be different? Of course they can. But the Sam Fisher that goes around and blows up everybody and sets off grenades is clearly not the guy who's like, well, yes, sir, I'm ready for another mission, and he's completely normal and cool-headed and collective. Any Assassin's Creed game, any Far Cry game, the list goes on and on of these open world games, or at least these action-adventure games, where the two are disconnected. So I really appreciated that about The Last of Us. I'll say that Abby's story was a little more believable, maybe because they wanted to portray her as a little older and wiser. I kind of took her to be maybe like in her late 20s as opposed to Ellie in her like early 20s. Maybe the older, wiser Abby figured it out, but she actually got something that was worth holding on to. Forgetting all the scavenging, forgetting all the questing and the guns and the material stuff in the world, she found a purpose with those two scars. And although one of the kids died, she found a role that she could be good at. And that's something that she could not be willing to give up. And she put away her quest for vengeance. She had the opportunity to kill Ellie in the theater, and she stopped. Now, she was coaxed. She put up a hell of a fight, and she probably would have killed Ellie had she not been, hey, wait, don't kill, you know. But she was getting ready to do it. Let there be no mistake. But she stopped, and she said goodbye. But before she did, she said, you blew it. We gave you another chance at life, Ellie, and you shunned us. Now, that's a little Messiah complex, Abby. You know, you're not so great going in and torturing people and then saying, well, I'm going to choose you to live, and now you get to go have a good life. You're welcome. But the truth is, Abby's story made a lot more sense because she realized vengeance was not the way. And the reality is, I think, based on her story and what we've seen, that makes logical sense. On Ellie's side of story, now we know a lot more about Ellie. We played a lot with her in the first game. We saw her grow up. We saw the horrible things that Joel did to provide for her. We saw the horrible things that she did throughout her story with Dina, with Jesse, a little bit with Tommy there. Whoever she was with, she was also a lean, mean killing machine. The difference, I feel like, in her story, all she knew was violence. She'd been brought up in this world, kind of used as a pawn because of her immunity. She saw Joel basically wipe out humanity's last chance. She learned about it after the fact. And then in this kind of weird redemption quest, which wasn't really redemption, more of a revenge. Why was she doing this? She systematically eradicates pretty much almost the entire WLF, takes out all of the lieutenants, if you want to think of that, Abby's inner circle, and basically goes on a murdering spree. At her story at the end, she's given the same choice that Abby's given. And unfortunately, Ellie succumbs to that darkness, and she leaves Dina and leaves JJ and goes off on this mission. When she gets there, she kind of comes to the same conclusion too, but it's a little too late. And in her world, that probably would be the most logical thing she would do. She would still be driven by this rage and this hatred and this flashback of Joel and having these kind of PTSD moments, realizing just how horrible what she saw was. She will be blinded by vengeance. Tommy, who is kind of her shadow father figure throughout this whole adventure, kind of coaxing her on, He also, going through a divorce, it seems like, lost his eye, which I really thought he died, actually. That was a hell of a shot. That was like a Carl from The Walking Dead shot that just kind of went whoop, right through the front of the temple and right out the eye. Tommy's alive. He's goading her into it. She feels this blind loyalty to Tommy and Joel because it's not really blind. I mean, that was the whole point of the first game, was them working through this together, trying to find safe haven. But that would make the most sense for Ellie too, for her to do what she did. I was disappointed as a human being. I was disappointed as a fan of this game because I saw her giving everything up. And look, we're not perfect. I've done things I'm not proud of. And I'll tell you what, I'm sure a lot of people are too. But cooler heads do prevail. And had Ellie just stopped right there, like Dina said, I'm fighting for you every day by pretending things are normal, by having this household. This is how we're going to survive. This is the battle we have to fight. Instead, Ellie wanted to actually have a physical battle, and she took the fight elsewhere, and when she came home, there was no prize to return home to. And it's sad, but I understand it. And that's why I love this game so much. The decisions that the characters made, the things that they did, made logical sense. The narrative portion of the game and the gameplay portion of the game came together in such a brilliant way. It was sad to watch. It was sadder to play. It was brutal. It was violent. It was gory. It was a beautiful game. But wow, there was a lot of killing in this game. There was a lot of quests for vengeance in this game. And in the end, cooler heads prevailed. And that is really kind of like the moral of this game. I will close on this. I find it very incredibly goofy that The Last of Us felt like it had to convey this message to us. To me, The Last of Us, the first one, was such a brilliant game because it took all normal conventions and it threw them right out the window. You had, and by this is what I mean, you had humanity basically on their last brink, their last hope. This evil virus had taken over the world. You had these little pocket camps of people trying to make a living, trying to stay normal. Clearly it wasn't working. You saw those poor people get executed at the very beginning of Last of Us 1. You saw the missions, what Joel and Tess were doing in order to try to get ahead in life. You saw these gun deals go bad, a lot of senseless killing there. The goal was to bring Ellie to this base to try to stop everything. And in the last moment, Joel very erratically, very personally kills everybody, including Abby's father. The last chance. And they truly are the last of us because humanity is doomed. Joel has doomed humanity. The last hope of finding a cure is off the table. And that was such a jaw-breaking, oh my God moment. That was so crazy. We never saw this story arc coming. The entire game was driven on Joel getting Ellie there safely. And then to find out he's going to shun his entire mission in order to save her by killing all of these innocent scientists. That's what made that game so good. The Last of Us 2, when you look back on it, kind of what was the plot about? It was ham-fisting over and over and over, blatantly, with character after character after character, that revenge is bad, revenge isn't good, turn the other cheek, be the better man, all that wonderful stuff. And the truth is, this game isn't really the best vehicle for that. And it was really bizarre to see Ellie's wonderful adventure in the first game kind of get destroyed or distorted almost in this game. And yes, I do understand why she would act that way, but at the same time, it was kind of cliche in a weird way. And I was surprised at a couple moments. Definitely that first fight between Abby and Ellie where you're playing as Abby. That was very shocking to me. That was a great, great moment. But as the game progressed on, and as we saw Ellie suiting up for war a second time, and as we saw her fighting Abby a second time, and then this time saying, you know what, I want to let you go home. It was like you did all that, and then at the last second, you swerved off on this random direction. Not in a way that Joel did. There was really no selfishness there, the way that Joel had. Ellie just was like, I guess I don't want to do this anymore. Maybe you could argue she was trying to take Joel's lessons and realize that you got to do what's best for you as opposed to kind of what's best for everybody. But if that was the case, she wouldn't have gone there to begin with. It was just a little weird, and it doesn't take away from the great narrative. It doesn't take away from all the other points that I made. It was just an ending that just felt kind of like, oh, we could have done better. I really feel like this game could have been even better. The gameplay, the everything around this game, the graphics, the sound effects, the voiceover, the atmosphere, 10 out of 10. Phenomenal masterclass. This will win Game of the Year. I have no doubt about that at all. However, it's just so odd to me that the story, which does resonate in its own weird way, just kind of felt in a weird way almost flat, almost scripted at the end. I just feel like we could have had something better. You know what would have been an interesting twist is if Ellie and Abby somehow teamed up. I know it's probably not possible after Ellie watched Abby just brain basically her adopted father. But I felt like we might have seen maybe history repeat itself in a weird way. Instead, we got a character who was muddled in violence and vengeance. We got this tacked on story at the end where Ellie decided one more time to go kill Abby and then chickened out at the last second. And it just kind of felt like she was just a weak, broken character. It's hard to get behind her anymore. It's hard to feel for her. She's just been used up and spit out. And it's unfortunate because, to me, this series has to stop. There should not be a Last of Us 3. This is the end. This is the arc. We saw, the rise and fall of Ellie. We saw the rise and fall, and I would argue, rise again of Abby. So there you guys go. That's my thoughts on everything. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Leave a comment below. Let me know what your thoughts are. Thank you so much for watching. Take care of yourselves, and until next time, I will see you guys on the other side.